Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to show sort of how to take a melody and make a basically on-the-spot arrangement. So, how you take a melody that you know and add sort of rhythm and harmony and that kind of thing without actually sort of having a detailed arrangement of it. So just kind of basically doing it by ear, okay? So to do this, I'm going to use Greensleeves. It's a melody that everybody knows. I'm going to start with just kind of taking the melody and playing it. Okay, so let's say the bare bones knowledge we have of this is just, in the key of A minor. So, okay. So let's say you know this. What is the first sort of simple thing that you can do? The most basic thing is to just add some bass. So to add some bass, the easiest sort of bass line that you can come up with is take whatever chord would go there and just play the root note of that chord. So so the next thing that you could do from here is you actually want to add the chords, right? So generally speaking, sort of playing chord and melody at the same time on the guitar is harder than doing this on a piano. So on a piano, it's sort of very straightforward. If you can, assuming you can play piano, there's you can play left hand plays chords, right hand plays melody. In guitar, it's a little bit harder. The simplest way to do this is to always just play the chord up until you get to the melody note. So cut the chord off anytime it gets higher than the melody note. Typically the melody should be the highest note, right? So for example here, if I said play A minor, you would play this. In this case, the melody goes, right? And I have an A minor there, so I would go like this. So a couple things here. Notice that I played this last A minor chord like that. The reason I did that is because I wanted to have this A on the highest note, and basically there's no way you can use this A minor position, have all three notes and not have it be an inversion, right? So for example, if I want to have this on the high note, I would want to use that form of the A minor, right? This sort of shows, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you want to get as fluid as possible with different chord shapes, with being able to play A minor, for example, in all these different forms, that kind of thing, right? That's kind of a separate thing to practice, but that makes this a lot easier. Okay, so let's say we got so far. We can take this melody, play it with this really simple harmonization. Let's say you want to create some sort of movement. What you can do now is do the same thing with the chords, but do some faster picking. So I'll kind of show what I'm talking about. So. was sort of deliberately slowing it down there, but you can, it does sound better faster. So like this. So if you saw a sort of very simple arrangement like this on piano, arranging this for piano would be very easy. The right hand would just be doing these arpeggios. Same with if you saw like a classical guitar arrangement of this, it would be sort of more thought out, right? What I was doing here was more sort of, if you listen to that carefully, you would see that I'm cutting off in a lot of places, that the accompaniment is cutting off. So it's kind of like a way of like doing the accompaniment enough in the empty spaces to compensate for the fact that it's not exact when there's actually actual melody going on, right? It's sort of like a quick, on the spot arrangement. It's not a detailed classical guitar arrangements typically require sort of doing harder chord forms, moving more up the fretboard, because this kind of stuff is a bit harder on guitar. So what else can we do here rhythmically? Another thing we can do is use strumming rather than picking, right? So, typically people think of strumming as something that you do to accompany either singing or another instrument, but it actually is possible to carry a melody while strumming. So we can just use the exact same logic, play the chord only up until the highest part, right? So let's say I have a rhythm that's like something like that, right? So so what I was doing there with my right hand was basically using my right hand as if it was a pick. I wasn't sort of using a lot of individual fingers. I was just kind of holding it like this and using it like a pick. So everything that I was showing here was sort of basically embellishing with, adding more harmony and more rhythm. Of course, we can also do melodic fills and melodic embellishments, right? So something like this, right? So, those kinds of melodic fills, if you follow my channel, I teach a lot of Middle Eastern music. They're very central there, but in Western music, obviously, it exists too. The most sort of obvious places you can do it is kind of just doing trills, right, that kind of thing at the end. Right, rather than that, I can go and then sort of connect into the next part, which goes stuff like that. This kind of thing, it sort of requires listening and developing a feel. You can, the more sort of styles of music that you have a feel for, the more you can take a melody and push it towards that direction. So, just by adding sort of little pentatonic fills like that, you can sort of push it towards a more folksy sound. Adding this kind of thing, you can, give it a more sort of Baroque or classical sound. Now, combining these things, so you would want to ideally be able to do some of this melodic embellishment within sort of, adding the rhythm or adding the arpeggiation and that kind of thing, right? So In other places, you can also add sort of, parallel third embellishments. So, right, that's a sort of parallel six, right? By the way, just a side thing on the melody here, there is a bit of tension here between, Greensleeves is sort of almost in the Dorian mode, in that, like that, right? That would be, A Dorian, but, actually in different recordings, sometimes you hear it as minor and sometimes you hear it as Dorian, and this note is the one that makes the difference. So, depending on which of those versions you want to use, you can use, for example, this. If I wanted to do that, I could go like that, right? So, like that. There, what I did is I used the minor version of this note, which is F, but, you could use the Dorian mode too, right? In which case, that part sounds more jazzy, right? So, what are some other things we can do to sort of vary this? We can take the main melody and put it higher or put it lower, right? So, for example, to put it lower, then you want to create the accompaniment in the high part, right? So, so, for example, if I want to play it, in the bass strings like this and still have some harmony to it, I can go. Sorry. I mean, there are obviously different textures that you can do with that. So notice, I started out with this. But, of course, you can also do arpeggiation. I think I switched to that at some point. So. I was slowing down the tempo a bit there, but you get the idea. You could, of course, mix this with strumming. You can, of course, do similar things with going to the high parts. Now, for this particular key, right, so we're in the key of A minor, playing melody and chord at the high parts simultaneously might be a little bit hard, especially if you're on a classical guitar, right? It would be easier if you have a cutaway here, or especially on electric, but, going to these high parts and playing chords there precisely, it's doable. It's just something that takes a lot of sort of technical practice, right? But you can do things like this. So actually one little practice that I recommend doing is that would help you doing that kind of thing on the high part is that you can basically take any chord and play it on the top three strings, right? Those kinds of harmonizations. embellishments, you know. All of these are very doable on the top 3 strings. So if you want to kind of play a melody with that light texture, it helps a lot to get fluid up there. So you know, one thing you could do to learn the chords up there is sort of take this chord progression that I've been playing and you know, and move it up. So you know, these are some basic things. Of course, I talked about the chords here as if they were sort of simple and set in stone. Even with sort of simple triad harmonizations like this, there are always multiple ways that you can harmonize a given melody, right? I mean, in this case, I think in the second sort of time around of the melody, I think in some of the times I was using F major, and the other times I was using A minor, right? So you know, there is a lot of variation that you can do with chords. If you sort of want to embellish this, one easy way that you can do it to, you know, make it sound a bit more sort of towards jazz is to just make all the chords 7th chords. So, you know, right, that kind of thing. I mean, by the way, what I was doing here, that's a sus chord, which is much more of a sort of classical sound, a sus4 chord, but you know, that works very well in cadences like this. Another thing that you can do here is sort of use a more sort of drony sound or open fifth sound, right? So so let me just now, play around with some of these ideas, and you know, I'll also play the sort of second part of the melody, which I haven't been playing, and you know, you can kind of watch it and maybe see how I use these ideas and use some of these ideas. So.